Hello, my name is Sam Holtzman from the Architecture Center of Excellence, and I'd like to introduce you to our Soft Skills for Architect workshop. And this presentation is a brief overview of that workshop that we have, and I'm pleased to have Ken Nagus, who is actually the main author of this particular course, provide you with an overview of the course offering that we have. Ken?
Thanks, Sam. I'm Ken Nagus. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a native New Yorker who currently resides in the Orlando, Florida area. It may surprise some of you that I don't talk like a New Yorker, but hey, we're not all alike. I have a master's in mathematics from the University of Michigan. I worked for General Motors twice in the information technology department and as part of the corporate business strategy team. I worked for Electronic Data Systems, or EDS, twice as an account executive and also in their corporate business strategy. And I was the director of IT governance for the Walt Disney Company. I was actually hired out of college specifically to develop and run statistical analysis programs based on my degree. I've had a variety of experiences in my career, as you can see here. I believe that this has helped me see the bigger picture in business and context the importance of IT in business. It's also allowed me to have greater empathy with people in a variety of roles. So how did a mathematician end up in soft skills? When I was in college, I was a shy math nerd with very limited social skills. They didn't teach me anything about that or the real world for that matter. So I was graduated and thought, what do I do now? Luckily, I got the job at GM running stat programs, but I found myself up against men in power suits. Do I have to actually talk to them? Can't I go hide in my cube and run the programs? Well, I had a rude awakening. So over the years, I had to adapt, and to survive, had to develop skills that helped me interact with other human beings. I think that universities and companies are much better at this kind of training now, but the predominant training is still focused on technical skills. And I believe there are many out there in the technology world who may have excellent technical and process skills, but are somewhat in need of interpersonal communication skills. So the purpose of this session you're listening to is to provide a case for the need for soft skills in the professional development of architects. We'll provide some examples of soft skills, and we'll provide an overview of the new Soft Skills for Architects workshop. So our agenda is as follows. After the session purpose, which we're doing now, we'll provide some definitions. And then we've broken soft skills into three categories: interpersonal, consultative, and common applications. And in each case, we'll provide a description and give some examples. And finally, we'll have some closing thoughts to conclude the discussion. So what are soft skills? The term is often associated with a set of behaviors and traits that relate to an individual's ability to interact with other people, such as communication skills, which contrasts with hard skills, those that are needed to perform tasks, such as industry expertise and process knowledge. So let's give a few examples. Examples of hard skills include statistical analysis, the work I was hired to do, web design, hitting out of a sand trap, something I've been unsuccessful at for many decades now. I'm told it is possible, however. Soft skills include listening, providing feedback, maybe the most difficult of all, staying married. Okay, I'm having a little fun with this one. We're not going to teach you how to do this in our workshop, but some of the skills, such as listening, can certainly help. You know, it's no wonder that it's often said that the soft stuff is the hard stuff. It's not easy. Here's the good news. You can practice these things. This will be a mantra you'll hear from me throughout this session and throughout the workshop. I love to look up definitions in the dictionary, so I looked up the word soft. And here's a few of them which you can read. Some of them are pretty nice, smooth or delicate in texture. But some of them seem to have a negative connotation, demanding little work or effort. I think that's a soft job. Weak or deficient mentally? That must be soft in the head. Lacking firmness or strength of character? So, it shouldn't be too surprising that the soft stuff is often considered less important, in a sense, than the hard stuff. You may have even heard someone label it as touchy-feely stuff in a derogatory way. So which is better? Is hard better than the soft? Well, on the one on the right, the Mickey bar, is hard. That must be good. The one on the left, I don't know, that may be bad. Although, if you're one of my dogs, the one on the left probably is actually better. Or a soft bed, in this case soft must be good, hard must be bad. But if you have problems with your back, the one on the right might be better. So there really is a serious point to these images. The point is that we all have our own distinct set of life experiences, our own sets of beliefs and opinions, and it will be vitally important for you to honor these differences in your work as an architect. And this point will be reinforced over and over in our workshop as we discuss the concept of mental models. So why do architects need soft skills? Many reasons. Here are just a few. To sell your ideas, to engage others in your efforts, to communicate on a day-to-day basis, identify key business issues. You have to create models, and to do that, of course, you have to deal with people. You have to interview them, don't you? To be a change agent. We're going to talk about that a lot more, the role of an architect as a change agent. To implement business improvements. You're not there for the status quo. You're around to help the business through architecture. So the point of this is architects cannot work in isolation. The work you do has really little value out of the context of improving the business. So here's the basic thesis of the soft skills workshop. If you're already an architect with hard skills, you know how to build models, for example, and you add to that some soft skills for better interpersonal relationships and better communication, then you have the opportunity to be a change agent and a trusted advisor in your company. This is the vision we have for you. We believe it should be the aspiration of every architect. You can't be what I once was, just a skilled statistical analysis cranking out regression analyses. I should have strived to advise the legal staff I supported with interpretations of those analyses to help them achieve success in their legal cases, not just hand them reports. Likewise, we want the architecture organization to be viewed as a go-to group for business improvement. We've broken the skills into 3 categories. We know the divisions aren't clean, there's a bit of an overlap, but we think this should be a helpful way to look at it. We'll now take a brief look at each of these 3 categories and provide some examples. So the first category is interpersonal skills. And here's the framework we're going to use in this course for interpersonal skills. First and foremost, we want you to have an understanding of your mental models and recognize that other people have their unique models. We'll explain this more in a moment. Once you come to grips with this concept, then you can build on that with some common tools like advocacy and inquiry. That's how you state your opinions and how you ask questions. Observations and assessments, listening skills, and others. We call these the foundational skills. Then once you've excelled at those, then you are better equipped to build lasting relationships and influence others. We also share some techniques around storytelling, which requires a solid basis in the foundational skills. So let's first explain mental models. Mental models are the structures that we build to house the experiences, assumptions, and attributions that create our interpretations of reality. My mental model is my lens to see the world. Why are they important? Because understanding that others operate from their own models, which are based on their unique experiences, provides a basis for productive relationships. The closest we can ever come to knowing reality is to understand the way we describe it. This isn't meant to be a statement of existentialist philosophy, but just to acknowledge the fact that our experiences are limited. For example, many of you have probably never been to my birthplace, New York City, but I'm willing to bet you have a mental model of what a New Yorker is like. Similarly, some of you may have spent your whole career in IT, and so it's natural for you to see the world through the lens of an IT person rather than, say, an accountant or a marketer. It's important to understand that others operate from their own models based on their life experiences. Now here's where this becomes critical. Our brains are pattern-making information systems. They organize our perceptions into patterns so we can function effectively. But they can become like neural grooves that channel new data into already formed patterns. This can lead to a kind of blindness, the inability to see anything but the established pictures in our brains. As an example, perhaps some of you had this model of a New Yorker, someone who talks funny and is coarse and rude. Well, again, hopefully we're not all like that. But can you see how that would influence the way you might think or act with regards to a New Yorker? So it's important to understand that our models are not reality. They are our creations. And sometimes we forget to leave them open to new data and view them as truth. To be effective in conversations and relationships, we must open our models, consider them incomplete and changeable. Another example, when you hear the phrase, the IT guy, what comes to mind? Or better yet, when someone not versed in technology has a problem with their laptop and they're told to call the IT guy, what image, what mental model do they have? Perhaps a technically brilliant nerd who can't communicate? Uh-oh, might any non-IT executives think of you that way? So it's important for you to understand that the models of your colleagues, clients, and customers are different than yours, and that so much more is possible if you don't constrain your thinking, actions, and words with the deeply ingrained set of beliefs and experiences you've built up over the years. There's an important corollary to the statement that everyone's mental models are different, and that's this. Your CXOs likely have a different language. It's been a long-running dig on IT folks that we talk in acronyms and terms nobody else understands, but I'd actually argue that every discipline does some of that as well. The point is, it's important for you to better explain your world and to better understand theirs. Do you know how they think? Conversely, how does your CXO perceive you? Do you know what they think of architecture and architects? Might it be different than how you think of it? I can tell you this. When I was in business strategy, I thought strategy was at the center of the universe. What could be more fundamental than establishing corporate direction? So it was a bit shocking to later discover that some executives viewed us as an academic staff overhead department with little connection with revenue generation. Now, it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. The issue is, how can you be effective if some have that mental model? And can you change them? Or can you ask what you can do differently? All right, now that hopefully we have a more solid view of mental models, we can build on that with some foundational conversational tools. Let's start with advocacy and inquiry as an example. What are they? They're conversational strategies for effectively sharing and soliciting mental models. Advocacy offers your opinions. Inquiry invites others to share their ideas and opinions. They're important because productive conversation requires a balance between these two. The balance isn't always there. How about your organization? Is it skewed? I find we tend to train and reward on knowing the answer to a problem. This starts back in school when we're tested on knowing answers. And this is carried on into business. Ever been in a problem-solving meeting where after some discussion, say John states a solution and everybody comes together, you're likely to hear, John was the hero of this meeting. He came up with the solution. But did anyone say, Jane asked such good probing questions that spurred dialogue and synergy that eventually led to John's solution? Jane was the hero of the meeting. What do you think? So here's a tool for you, and this is something you can actually practice. In the workshop, we'll share all the rows and go into more depth, but for now let's take a brief look at the first 3 rows. When you advocate, explicitly state your own reasoning and why you believe what you do. When you're inquiring, actively ask for the other's views and ask for the reasoning behind their views. I don't always hear the reasoning explained. Too often it seems like the discussion is, I'm right and he's wrong. When you advocate, provide the data on which your reasoning is based. When you do inquiry, ask for the data on which their reasoning is based. Evidence that can be viewed and verified by all goes a long way to having a more productive conversation. My wife is into dog shows. She tells of dog owners complaining, "My dog should have won. He's better than the dog that won." Well, there are standards for size and shape of various features of each breed, but the complainers rarely make reference to the data. It's just, "Mine is better." There are a few other roles in this framework we'll share in the workshop. All I wanted to do here was make the point that effective inquiry and advocacy are things that can be practiced. Conversational skills aren't that different than playing the violin in the sense that you can work your way up to mastery by practicing and learning. Now, since this can be uncomfortable, I often suggest that people practice in a safe place with a trusted partner. I know it seems elementary, but we don't do this enough. I find that more people are ineffective at inquiry than advocacy, and that's where more practice is needed. I want to note that it must be genuine too. You need to have a true interest in learning what others think. Besides, manipulation can be detected a mile away. Now, advocating your opinion is not bad, but it's only effective if you use it in an inviting way by allowing others to challenge your position without taking that challenge personally. Advocating your ideas and allowing others to inquire is really a great learning opportunity. To conclude, proper inquiry and advocacy are fundamental to getting along with others and then building solid relationships. And oh yes, it can be practiced. Now in the workshop, we'll address the concepts on this chart and a few others I think you'll find valuable. The second category of soft skills we have labeled consultative. When you hear the word consultant, what comes to mind? Perhaps someone impeccably dressed, maybe with a group of interns trailing behind. They interview you, you tell them everything you know, they play that right back to your bosses. They make a whole lot more money than you do. Well, we're here to tell you that the good consultants become the trusted advisors for their clients and provide value, and that you should have the same mindset. Wouldn't it be a wonderful goal to have the senior executives call on you for advice and assistance? So, what do consultants do well? They have a mastery of the interpersonal skills that we just talked about. So I'll put a check mark since that's covered in our workshop. They're very good at understanding the business of their clients. My advice there is just go do it. You know, as a leader of people, I would often do career planning with my folks, and many of them would say, I don't even know what all the positions are in this company. I don't know what we do. My advice was, go ask. There are a few people who don't love to talk about their jobs. So one of the things I'd tell them was, you might call up this director of materials management, and I can help you with the introduction. Call them and say, I really want to learn more about the business and be more effective, but I really don't understand your department. Would you have 30 minutes, or someone on your staff maybe, who could spend 30 minutes with me and help me understand better? We'll do it over lunch. Most people will say yes. Same advice to you as architects. Architecture is a world where you really have to understand all aspects of the business, so it's important to go do that. Good consultants see the bigger picture, so they have systems thinking tools. They're very good at clearly defining issues, and some of the challenges given to you by executives are often very fuzzy and unclear. Part of the job of the consultant is to dig deeper, ask a lot of questions, and clearly define those issues. So they have scoping and framing tools and skills. They seek alternative solutions. Most executives want to hear that they have options, not just one solution. So consultants have decision-making and governance tools. It's a cliche, but consultants can think outside the box. But to go with that, they have a set of creativity and innovation tools and skills. They're excellent at building client relationships. And to do that, they create a service-oriented approach. That's a really important one for anyone in a staff role, is think about how do you service others. They're good at creating change. Most aren't called in for the status quo. I would argue the same is true for you. You're there to help improve the business, perhaps change it on a dramatic level even. So understanding change management principles and practices is pretty important. So let's take a look at a couple of these briefly in this session. Let's start with framing. So here's a definition of framing. It's a way in which a person perceives a particular situation. It is constructed by the information one has available, the alternatives one can think of, and the logic to put these elements together. So why is it important? It allows the listener to focus on specific topics and issues. It can help bring clarity to complex topics. As we just noted, many of the challenges the CXOs will throw your way are big, complex, fuzzy issues. It can help bring visibility to your mental models by offering explicit, visible models. Sam frequently emphasizes the importance of making your architecture models visible. In this workshop, we also stress the importance of making mental models visible. So let's give an example of a framing tool. One of the time-tested framing devices is the 2x2 model. Let's take a look at one. Several years back, I was responsible for marketing and planning for an IT service supplier. I was asked by my leader to identify the possible business opportunities for the coming year with our major client. It would have been traditional to ask each of our account executives to provide me with the list. So what do the engineers want to do? What does the finance department want to do? And so on. Then we put them in one big list, assign some weights, and rank them. And in time we did this, but I suggested we might first look at it in a different way. So I borrowed a 2x2 from Gary Hamel and C.K. Prahalad, who I consider among the most influential business thinkers of the last few decades. So the model says the following. How can we improve our position in existing markets by better leveraging our existing competencies? Let's put this in Disney terms. They have this movie called Frozen. Anybody heard of it? So one of the things they did was to create attractions and shows in their theme parks around Frozen. I visit the parks in Orlando a lot, and you just can't escape seeing Anna and Elsa everywhere. Lower right. What new products or services could we create by creatively redeploying or recombining our current competencies? Disney has had a long competency of storytelling, but many of their classic movies are based on European fairy tales. Certainly other cultures are rich in stories and legends, so why don't we apply our skills to a movie in India or our theme parks in China? What new competencies will we need to build and protect and extend our franchise in current markets? Here they might have said, how do we increase our footprint in video gaming, mobile technology apps, and so forth? As always in 2x2s, it seems the upper right is the place where companies seek to create new products that speak to the unarticulated needs and where they create new business models. Okay, so now back to my challenge as a marketer. Using this framework, I pose the question as follows. Instead of just generating a list of what each department wants from IT, why don't we engage our team and our customers in a discussion around these quadrants? Wouldn't that have the possibility of generating a different set of ideas for investment? And by the way, isn't this a better way to show our customers we care about their business and we're not order takers? So this is a classic example of a framing tool. I hope this makes sense to you. And once again, this is something you can develop and practice. All right, let's take a quick look at another important consultative skill. That's around change management. I first want to ask you this. Is your purpose as an architect to create these? Is it to plaster the walls with large scrolls full of data? Now, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, bringing visibility to data is helpful. But these are the means to the end. In the world of architecture, nothing stays the same, at least for very long. Architecture projects and endeavors aren't intended to manage the status quo. They're to help move the business forward. It's all about change. So as you guide your architecture team on a journey, your role as an agent of change becomes more and more critical. And while change can't all be scripted in advance, it serves you well to have some concepts and tools in your toolkit to manage change. Now, there are some who claim that change can't be managed, since it's often evolutionary in nature. But there are things you can do to create an environment not only conducive to change, but which enables effective change throughout the journey. This is how we'd like all change to occur. You start at a certain point, you push a button, and things keep getting better and better. But that's not reality. This is what invariably happens. For a while, things might even get worse. Some are disillusioned. They may not support the change. They might even fight it. The training needed for the new environment may not be completely in place. Furthermore, while you're trying to get the change in place, you're also managing the status quo for some period. As a simple example, if you move to a new ERP system, you don't unplug the old and plug in the new. There's a lengthy period of time when you're phasing the new system in. Imagine if the change you're architecting involves not just an application change, but a wholly new business model. Now, even more so, you need to be prepared. The dip you see in the curve is often called the Valley of Despair, and you can bet there will be resistance. Many, perhaps including you, are unsure and will question whether you're doing the right thing. Studies have shown that the number one obstacle to success in change is indeed resistance to change. There are many reasons for this, not the least of which is the fear and concern of becoming irrelevant. This is especially important in technology-based arenas. It wasn't that long ago that I realized that my children knew more about our home network than I did, and they're professional musicians not trained in IT like I was. At some point in our lives, we all become experts in some discipline or domain, only to discover that the world has moved on in new directions. The choice people have is to have humility and follow a path of learning, or risk becoming less mission critical. But this can become very scary. Our suggestion is that there's an art and a science to change, and that as an architect, your role is to reduce the impact of the dip by shortening the time or reducing the impact of the business and helping guide your stakeholders through the valley. There are actions you can take to anticipate the reactions of stakeholders. You can be proactive in addressing issues in the valley of despair rather than just waiting for them to occur. You can coach and guide the stakeholders through the turbulence of the changes, minimizing disruption and enabling success. In the workshop, we'll elaborate further on these frameworks and some of the actions you can take. Next, I'd like to discuss the notion of service. So here are a few questions for consideration. Who are your clients? Good consultants don't think of users, they think of clients or customers. Give some thought for a moment about how your suppliers treat you. What do you like about it? What do you not like? Now can you apply the same principles to your interactions with the departments inside your company that you serve? Have you built relationships with your clients? Is doing so part of your plan, or do they happen by fate? We all like to think we're partners in the business with the other departments, but that partnership must be earned over time through good service and trust. What is your service strategy? Or have you focused on a technology strategy? Exceeding expectations. What are some of the little things that can make a difference? As an example, it's not uncommon if you stay at a Disney World hotel here in Florida for the housekeeper, whose basic task after all is to clean the room, to take a washcloth and shape it into an animal. When the child first comes into the room and sees this, it's an extra bit of magic. A little thing indeed. So what are the little things you could do to delight your clients? I hope these questions are good food for thought for you. We'll discuss all of these in more detail in our workshop. You want to be considered relevant to your organization, and that's done through good service. Let's look at it the negative way. If you're not considered relevant to your organization, then I'd say beware when the inevitable next round of budget cuts hit. Our third category of skills will be very familiar to you. There's a ton of literature about all of these things and entire courses around each one. Our intent isn't to rehash old material, but to build on what we've shared in interpersonal consulting skills to show you how they can make a difference in these common everyday activities. Let's take a very brief look at interviewing, or the special version of interviewing architects know as review sessions. First of all, why do we interview people? There are many reasons. To understand the perspectives and mental models of decision makers and key stakeholders. And here's some of the reasons you can see below. Also, to get information from subject matter experts. Gather what they know, get pointers to other data sources you might need. Once you frame it up this way, you can now use your inquiry skills to probe more deeply and use your framing tools to clarify the context and so on. The primary tool we offer in this space is a comprehensive checklist on what to do before, during, and after an interview. A good consultant plans these steps and practices them, even visualizes how it will go to anticipate any hiccups along the way. The details can make a difference when you interview people, even afterwards. For example, how many of you write a thank you email to the people you interview? And again, it all requires preparation and practice. I realize this has been a whirlwind overview of soft skills. Our intent here was to make a case for the need to further develop your skills in these areas to become a better architect. Hopefully we've touched on that. So to net it out, mastery of soft skills is about understanding your own mental models and a recognition that they are incomplete, recognizing that others' models are different and honoring those differences, and then seeing the world of your colleagues through their lenses. Working on your communication skills, developing relationships built on trust and service excellence, thinking and acting like a consultant, and doing this well takes practice. I think I've used this word a few times. Soft skills are important to an architect because it's all about people. You can't do architecture in a vacuum. To repeat something we said earlier, you can't work in isolation. The work you do has little intrinsic value out of the context of improving the business for others. So what's next is the new soft skills workshop we've developed for you, wherein we will introduce you to some of the underlying concepts of selected soft skills and provide some practical tools and frameworks. Our approach for the workshop is to share the proven practices we've found to be relevant and useful, provide concrete and simple tools and techniques we believe you can use the next day back at work, and also give you some time to practice in a safe environment. For many years, I've gone to classes, seminars, and conferences, and I got to a point where what I wanted was to bring home what I'd call $1 million slide, some simple tool or framework I could use the next day. So for this class, we've collected dozens of these $1 million slides for you. I can promise that days, weeks, years from now, you'll be using some of these models, phrases, and tools. Many of them we didn't invent, and we will credit the author and provide a reference for you. Some may be second nature for you, and some will be new. Some may seem shallow, and some may seem deep. What's common is that they're all practical. Here's the outline for the course. The introductory section is a course introduction. There's an optional architectural overview if the audience does not understand architecture. And we start with change management principles. Now, although change management is what we'd call a consultative method, we start and close the content of the workshop with this topic because we feel so strongly about the need for architectures to view themselves as change agents. Then in section 2, we cover the foundational communication skills, storytelling, influencing and building relationships, and service orientation. That's really a segue into the third section of consultative skills, which also includes contexting, framing, and scoping, creativity and strategic thinking, decision making and governance, and time management. The fourth section, the common application skills, include interviewing, presentations, facilitating meetings, and project management. Then we closed by going right back to change management to close the loop, and then we conclude the course with some last thoughts. Now, on any of these topics, you can find tons of material on the internet, on books, conferences, and so on. Now, Sam and I don't claim to be the world-leading experts on any specific topics here. We're not psychologists who can dig deeply into your behavior. We haven't written treatises on how the brain works, and we're not consultants sharing theoretical concepts we formulated through our own research and or papers written by research firms. Rather, we are business people with many years total experience in the real world of business, industry, and architecture. And like you, we sought out ways to improve our soft skills. And what we're sharing here are some tools and practices we have used successfully. Sam, as one of the leading architects in the world, will help bridge the gap between these tools and the real world of architecture. So we deliver this class in 3 ways. One is through distance learning, the second is an in-person workshop, and the third, we can come to your site. In those cases, we can tailor the number of days and materials to your specific needs. So in conclusion, if you're not sure what your executive leaders want and need, if you'd like to improve your ability to understand these wants and needs, if you'd like to have better interactions with team members and fewer dysfunctional meetings, well, who wouldn't like that? If you want to become a change leader, if you aspire to be a trusted advisor in your organization, if you want to be a world-class architect, if you want to make architecture relevant to your firm, then we believe you should work on your soft skills. All right, I'll now turn it back to Sam to wrap it up. Sam?
Thank you, Ken, for that outstanding overview of our soft skills for enterprise and business architects. And this course is offered by the Architecture Center of Excellence. We have both public workshops and on-site workshop opportunities. And we'll hope you contact us through email, or of course our telephone number is area code 810-231-0531, or through email or through our websites. And we'll see you soon in one of our courses. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.